Hello, everyone. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Rollins and the Office of Career Development. I'm Roger Presswood, Career Coach and Associate Director, and also have my colleague here, Simmer Ramosevic, joining us as well.
Thank you so much, Roger.
So I congratulate all of you on being so proactive with your careers. Today we're going to be covering the resume and the cover letter. The resume is probably the number one topic that we see students for in our office. So we want to do this webinar to give you a good head start on creating a good resume, and we will take questions at the end of this, and then we'll move on to the cover letter. So let's get started. So the true purpose of a resume, it is a marketing tool. It's a tool utilized to market yourself as a competitive candidate to an organization. So the internships, the real positions that you're interviewing for, they will have other candidates. So those are competitive internships. So think of your resume, it's a marketing tool, and it is to obtain an interviewer. So interviewers do spend about 15 to 30 seconds on a resume before they either choose or eliminate you as a candidate. It is true, I've interviewed for years, and we scan resumes quickly, and we need to see that it's in a good format and that you are using keywords and that you have the skill sets for the position. It's also to highlight and market 4 key areas, and there are 4 areas that are important to employers: experiences, your skills and abilities, your accomplishments, and your education and knowledge. Out of the 4, usually accomplishments are the ones that we have to work on the most with students. So I want you to think about, when you write a bullet point, if I were to ask you in an interview, what are you proud of? What did you accomplish? Think about that and try to include that in the bullet point. I know not everything you can write an accomplishment for, but if you, for example, did a fundraiser and you exceeded your fundraising goal by 5%, that's a great accomplishment. So you want to include that in the bullet point. A big part of resumes, though, are correcting common mistakes. So I want to go through the top 5 mistakes that I usually see. 1, it's a generic resume. It's utilizing the exact same version for every application. Yes, you're going to have a good foundation version of a resume, but you don't want it to be word for word exactly the same for all applications. So you want to customize that and not use a generic resume. No related keywords. This is how you're going to make it more customized. So you're going to use keywords that match the job description. Very few candidates will go back and actually add in keywords like strong communication, team member to the resume, even though it's requested in the job description. Resume cliches. I had just said strong communication, excellent communicator, highly motivated. It's fine to use these, but if you don't give me the context of how you developed those skill sets, then I just kind of see it as, well, of course they wrote excellent communication skills. But if you develop that, if you said, Roger, yes, I really did develop my communication and teamwork skills as a team lead for Habitat for Humanity, I need you to state that so I can have context of where you developed the skill set. Spelling errors, this is instant elimination, so double, triple check that resume for errors. And then lack of stated skill sets. So utilize your transferable skills from all of your experiences, including volunteer activities. We don't expect you to have the exact skill sets for public health. It's why you're coming to public health. I know you've worked in a lot of different areas. You do have transferable skills, though, and a lot of times those may have been not in more formal internships, but actually in more of your volunteer activities. So know that you can use all of your experience, from classes to projects to volunteer experiences, as transferable skill sets. I want to go through the various sections of a resume. There are some that are required sections, and those are the contact information, the education, experience section, and your skill sets. Optional, but we do recommend, would be volunteer service, as public health is a service-oriented field, of course. Significant honors and awards, any trainings or certifications that you have, and they don't always have to be related to public health. Sometimes it can just show achievement or accomplishment in the trainings and certifications. And then organizations or memberships that you're a part of, and of course, as you come to Rollins, you'll be adding some of those to your resume, hopefully. So let's start with the sections of a resume. The contact information. This is known as your header on the resume. So you're going to start with your full name. It's going to be bolded, and usually it's a little bit larger than the rest of the resume. So I like to see 14 to 16 font size on the name. For the address, you can use the Rollins address if you don't want to use your home or personal address for the resume. So I have it here, 1518 Clifton Road, Northeast is our address if you'd like to use that. The phone, I want you to use your one best phone number and have an appropriate professional message. As an interviewer, there's nothing worse than calling and just hearing something, hey, leave a message. You want to have a professional message. So, hello, you have reached Roger Presswood. Thank you for calling. Please leave your name and number, and I will return your call as soon as possible. Something simple like that, but it's professional, and it leaves a good impression. And then try to call that interviewer back within 24 hours. If someone is going beyond 24 hours, I think they might not be that interested in the opportunity. And then email address, definitely preferable to use your emory.edu address. That is going to be much more recognized, especially here in Atlanta, over a Gmail or a Yahoo address. So the next section of the resume will be education. It's going to look something like this. So you're going to have the names and locations of your graduate and undergraduate schools, the dates of graduation, expected graduation. So for all of you, you're going to be expected May 2020, and employers do like to see the word expected, so that's why I included it here. Your degrees completed, sought, and concentrations. And then GPA, I get a good bit of questions on GPA. There is a rule that if you have a 3.5 or above, you typically list that GPA on the resume. Of course, you won't have your Rollins GPA until the end of your first semester. The good news is, in public health, the GPA is not the critical aspect that they look for. But if you have a 3.5 or above, I would go ahead and list it, and you'll list it around this section here so it stands out. Once you get your Rollins GPA, you can add that as well. The next section of the resume is the experience section. So remember to utilize keywords and skills from that specific job description. You're going to list your relevant experience and positions. Typically, the rule is as far back as 10 years. That's going to be much more than most of you need to go because that's going to take you to high school. But it is possible you had significant long-term experience in high school. Maybe you said, Roger, that's where I really was a good team member, a team lead, and I developed those skill sets. So it's possible you could list something that goes back as far as high school, but most candidates will not. Chronological, you're going to start in your experience section with your most recent opportunities and work your way backwards. Again, don't ignore your significant volunteer experiences. It may match better than something that you did a more formal internship in. So if you did a lab internship as a formal experience, but the position you're applying for may be communications, you could say, Roger, actually there's a volunteer experience where I was the communications chair that matches better. So that volunteer experience may have more transferable skill sets than something formal. So it is perfectly okay to use your volunteer experiences. As an interviewer, at this point in your career, now that you're back in school, I'm not as concerned whether it was formal or paid. I just want to know, what did you learn, accomplish, and how can you utilize that transferable skill set in this internship? Don't abbreviate or use acronyms. The first time, spell it out. The second time, you can abbreviate the acronym in parentheses, and I'll show you what that looks like. So for example, if it's a CDC, you write the Centers for Disease Control, and then in parentheses, you put CDC. And then the next time that you refer to the CDC, you can just write parentheses CDC. Continuing into the experience section, bullet points, you're not going to use pronouns like I, he, or she, or excessive words such as a, the, and. And the reason is bullet points are not complete sentences. I want those to be succinct. So that's how we keep those to 1 or 2, maximum 3 lines. Be specific and quantitative. Include numbers when possible, such as percentage increase or the number of team members involved. I know that's not always possible, but if you know that, yes, Roger, there are a couple of volunteer opportunities where I worked with teams of 4 to 5, include that. Again, if you did increase your fundraiser goal and you surpassed it by 5%, right, that interviewers, for some reason, love to see numbers in the bullet points. And stay away from verbiage where you start out the bullet point with worked or maintained. When I hear maintain, I think someone just kind of sat there and watched. That may not be true, but that's kind of what we think. So you're going to use action verbs to start those bullet points. And good action verbs: created, developed, managed, led, increased. Those are the ones that catch my attention as the interviewer. So a bullet point example, a poor example would be, I did filing for the office. Probably this is more what I might see of a typical student coming in. Organize the office filing system. That is a better example. The best example, though, would be streamline office filing system by reducing duplicate files of 450 patient records for a 5-doctor medical practice. So if you were applying to a position and it were here at Emory, and yes, it was a larger medical facility, the candidate that wrote the third bullet point, that's the one that's going to qualify for that skill set. The interesting thing is the person that wrote the second one, the better example, may have as much experience as the third one. But if you don't write it and tell me, I don't know it as an interviewer, and I'm going to choose the one that explained the skill set the best. The next section of the resume, the volunteer service section, this is an example of what it could look like. I do think you're going to need to list your more relevant activities, experiences, positions held. I know some of you are overachievers. You may have 15 or 20. You're really not going to have room to list that many. So think of, there is no set number, but think about the ones that, if I were to ask you in the interview, what are you proud of that you accomplished as the membership chair for Toastmasters? Because when I interview, I ask candidates about their volunteer service, and sometimes they don't have a whole lot to say. So if you put something down here, make sure that you have something to say if the interviewer asks you. I do want to emphasize again, you can add bullet points under these experiences. And so if you said, Roger, as a membership chair for Toastmasters, I increased membership by 10%, that's good. You could add that as a bullet point under the membership chair. And remember, you can include this in you can include a volunteer experience in your main experience section. So if you said, Roger, this position with a membership chair better matches the skill sets than my lab position, then move this membership chair Toastmasters Atlanta under the experience section and add bullet points that match the job description. So these are interchangeable at this point in your career. The next section, skills, qualifications. Typical skills are going to be computer, those are highly needed, languages, any trainings that you have, certifications, things like Coursera that you may have can go under the skills qualifications section. Honors and awards. If you have 1 or 2 honors, you can list those under that education section. But if you have a more extensive list, it's very common to create an honors and awards section, and it goes towards the bottom of the resume. And then memberships and organizations. Great to list student organizations that you're involved in. And of course, again, you'll be adding more hopefully as you come to Rollins. Formatting suggestions. So 10 to 12 is typically what is recommended. I find that 11 is the ideal reading size for most fonts. I'd say a lot of common fonts are Arial and Garamond that we use on the resume. The margins recommended is 1 inch. If you are really struggling to get it down to 1 page, you can drop to 1/2 inch margins and it still looks fine as far as your formatting. Paper type. Resume quality paper for printed copies. So when you're going to interviews, we do recommend that you have printed copies, and resume paper is what we recommend. You can get that on Amazon or as something like an Office Max. Bullet versus paragraph. Always choose bullet points. Interviewers do not read paragraphs under your descriptions. They just don't have time. If they're going to read something, it's going to be the cover letter. So if you're currently using paragraphs, convert those to bullet points in your resume. Using bold and italics. I see a common error with bold and italics. Most candidates overutilize the bold and italics information by doing it with dates and cities. The purpose of the bold and italics is to draw the eye to that information. Usually there's not a reason that you need me to immediately look at the cities or the dates. So keep that bold and italics to things more like the school, the job title, and the organization that you want the interviewer's eye to be drawn to, because remember, it's 15 to 30 seconds if they're scanning the resume. And then length. We do recommend 1 page if possible initially. And sometimes we'll see students with just 3 or 4 sentences into a second page, and that's sometimes the reason that we recommend 1 page. We do see students with 2 pages. It is acceptable, but realize that during your 2 years here at Rollins, we're going to ask you to keep that to 2 pages most likely. So if you're at 2 pages already, you're going to have to work on cutting back some information, especially as you add new experiences here. So common issues and questions. References. Do not list references on the resume. You're going to list those on a separate page using a resume paper and take it to your interviews. And 3 references are a minimum. We recommend 4 in case they can't reach one of your references. Personal information, you're not going to include any information such as race, religious, marital status. You do see that in some international CVs, but in the U.S., you do not include any of this personal information. Hobbies and personal interests, that can be a category, and sometimes students add that. Just use smart judgment. If you say golf, make sure that if I ask you as an interviewer, oh, so what's your handicap? When's the last time you played golf? Don't say that, well, it's been over a year, I really don't have time for it anymore. If you put something down, that's a connection point, and have something to say about it. I personally love ballroom dancing, so if someone asks me about ballroom dancing, I'll talk for an hour about it. So if you don't, it's fine if you don't have this category, but some of you do have some interesting hobbies, and it can be a connection point for interviewers. And then online resume applications, follow those application instructions exactly as stated. Read it twice, because an example would be on Handshake. Some of our employers, they have you submit it on Handshake, and then it will also state, please go to our website and submit. And if you did not do both, you would be eliminated. So read those instructions twice to make sure that you're matching it exactly. So the resume next steps, we have a great online resume critique system. It's called VMOC. You will be able to access that at the end of July, and you're going to receive a welcome email from the Office of Career Development. So VMOC is going to give you ideas and suggestions, formatting, bullet points is going to help you a good bit, and we recommend that every student utilize that. Remember that the resume, it's a work in progress, so you're going to continue to update, improve, and target your resume to your areas of interest. As you get here at Rollins, you're going to be taking different courses, different internships. Your interests are going to expand and change most likely, so the resume is not a static document. You're going to continually update it, improve it, and target it. We have a great 41-page guide on our website as well, and you can see it here. Here's the website. You'll click on the Career tab and then Job Search Tools, and it goes through a lot of information, I'm telling you, even in more detail. So I do want to open up this for questions right now. If you have any questions, you can submit those to me. Any questions that you have?
Okay, we'll go ahead and go through Q&A session. So can you share this video for us to refer to after the webinar?
Yes, this will be available on our site after the webinar, so it will be up.
Okay, thank you, Roger. So the next question would be, when I was an undergrad, I didn't have a job or participate in any clubs. What should I do?
I would try to think about any class projects that you were involved in, because you want to show that you are able to demonstrate some key skills like teamwork, communication. Those are usually essential for most positions. So think about anything that you did in your coursework and add that to the resume.
Okay, so the next question would be, do you know if public health employers would hire someone who doesn't have any work or volunteer experience?
They're probably going to ask you, why do you not have any work or volunteer experience? So maybe you were pre-med and you said, Roger, it really just took up all of my time. So just be able to explain that And then passion and desire has a lot of impact in public health. Because if you said, Roger, I'm really passionate about the environment and that's your major, and you can relay that in the cover letter and in the interview, that has a big impact. Because we all know that you're coming to public health because you want to serve and make impact. So always express that passion, and that can have a big impact, especially when you're interviewing for an internship.
Thank you so much, Roger. So the next question would be, do you recommend just black and white or some color on the resume?
I recommend black and white. It is possible for some realms, some very creative realms, artistic realms, that colors are utilized. Typically in public health, we just want to stick with black and white.
Thank you. We'll proceed. When making a resume, 2 pages, how do you suggest making the page breaks?
So at the bottom of the first page, I try not to carry over an experience. So see if you can, at the bottom of the first page, see if you can finish up the bullet points for an experience, and then start the new experience or the new section at the top of the next page. You may have to work with your spacing and the margins a little bit to do that.
Okay, thank you so much. For those of us who may have majored in something different than public health in our undergrad, how much of our experience from another field should we include in the resume? For example, most of my undergrad was spent fulfilling clinical hours.
I would definitely include all of that because, again, we don't expect you to have the public health skill sets coming in. But what I want to see is that, yes, you've worked in a fast-paced environment. You've handled situations, perhaps conflict with team members. You've worked with teams. You've enhanced your communication skill sets. And in clinical rotations, the things you were doing, a lot of those things would be relevant. So I know that it's not going to be related, but we are going to try to pick out those transferable skill sets that let me know as an interviewer, good, she has the core transferable skills. I can train her on some of the things I want her to learn. That's the purpose of the internship as well, is for you to learn. So you have to emphasize the transferable skills.
So the next question is related to cover letter. Proceed.
And we're moving on to cover letters as soon as we get done with questions in the resume.
Okay, and that concludes our Q&A session for resume. So we'll continue with the cover letter.
All right.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you. So cover letters, they are an important part of the application, but I know it can be confusing as to what truly makes a good cover letter. So we'll go over the details of that, and again, I will answer questions at the end of this. But cover letters do take a good bit of time and effort. So let's talk about motivation. What's the motivation to spend that time writing the cover letter? Well, the first would be it is to separate yourself from other candidates. Not every candidate is going to write a cover letter. So just the fact that you're submitting a cover letter instantly separates you in terms of motivation. Next, to express your desires and reasons for applying. As I said earlier, you're all coming to public health because you want to make an impact and serve. And so you want to express that in the cover letter, the desire for the organization, for the Carter Center, why you want to work in global safe water. Provide more detail than what is stated in a bullet point. A bullet point is not a complete sentence, as I said earlier. You can only write 1 or 2, 3 sentences max. And so you're going to provide more detail than you can in the bullet point, and then highlight a significant experience or skill or qualification. So if it says must have strong teamwork, well, in the bullet point, there's only so much you can say, work with team of 3 on XYZ project. But in the cover letter, you can write me a paragraph on your teamwork and what motivates you about working with teams, and more of your experience of how you handle perhaps a project or a difficult situation. So the cover letter is really your opportunity to highlight something that in the job description they're really emphasizing. And then required for the job description, you will definitely see some state submit resume and cover letter. If it says that, it is not optional. You must write that cover letter. Some students don't realize that, it said that, but it didn't say required or must submit it. If it says submit resume and cover letter, it is required. Do that or you will be eliminated most likely. Formatting considerations. So you're going to use the same header as you did on the resume. So the one that we showed earlier, use that same header, and that gives a good professional uniform look to the resume and the cover letter. The letter format, 1-inch margins, and usually the same font as your resume as possible, so use that 11 font. 1 page maximum, so you do not want to go over 1 page, but you also don't want to make it too short, and usually it looks too short at about the half-page point. I see that sometimes. Ideally, you want to try to get to at least about 2/3 of the page. You can utilize the full page as long as I see as an interviewer that it's not just a form letter, that you're customizing it. So let's go through the steps to writing a cover letter. The first thing, you're going to research the organization to express motivation and specific interest in the position and the organization. So I don't expect you to spend an hour on the website, but for example, if you went to the Carter Center's website and just spent 5 to 10 minutes, you can read about their mission statement, you can read about their guinea worm project and how they reduced guinea worm 10%, in the last 8 years. Just a few minutes is going to give you enough information to write that in the cover letter. You're going to evaluate the job description to determine the most relevant skills and qualifications. Just like you do for the resume, you're going to read that job description and pick out the ones that are most transferable. You're going to go back and review your resume as well to determine the transferable skills and experiences that are a match for that position. And you're going to create a draft version. So don't try to write the perfect resume in one sitting. You can't do it. Get it down on paper and continue to refine it. And then it does get easier the more cover letters that you write. But I have a lot of students that try to write it perfect the first time. It's just not possible, but get it down on paper. So let's look at what it's going to be like to evaluate the job description. So for example, here, this is a program communications intern. So they asked for program planning. You said, Roger, I was on the new student orientation planning committee in my undergrad. That's a great transferable skill set. The next thing it said was writing communications for the website. And you can say, Roger, yes, I did update the Student Government Association website. And even if you didn't write extensive communications, just the fact that you went in, maybe you updated some aspects of the website, that's still enough for me as an interviewer to say, good. She has some exposure to it. It doesn't mean that you have the exact skill, but even exposure to the skill set is more than a lot of other candidates are going to have. The next would be marketing of health-related programs. You can say, Roger, yes, I did do some marketing to the community and my volunteer experience with the American Red Cross. Moving on to preferred, strong experience working in teams. Here you can say, Roger, yes, there were 3 experiences in my undergrad and volunteer that I can write about where I really did develop my teamwork abilities, more of my communication skills. I actually was able to take the lead in one of those experiences. So this is how I want you to think. Not that you're an exact match for what they're stating, but that I've had exposure to some of these skills. They are transferable, and that is what you're going to write about. Just go through the 3 sections of a cover letter. You can break it down into 3 sections. The first one is the introduction. If a contact name is provided in that job description, utilize that name. Very often, though, you will not see a contact name, especially for the CDC. They're notorious for not giving names. So I would utilize a heading like Dear Hiring Manager. You see sometimes to whom it may concern. I do not like that. So just use Dear Hiring Manager if no name is given. You're going to state the position title, division, and reference number if provided. And then a brief description of who you are and your background. And finally, express motivation for the organization. So what it's going to look like, here you can see we've got the header, same one from the resume. We've got the date. They did not supply names, so we're going to use Dear Hiring Manager. And this is a really good opening paragraph. You can see you're saying, I'm writing to express my strong interest in the program and communications intern position. You put the reference number that was provided at the CDC in the Division of Global Safe Water. I'm currently a first-year student at the Rollins School of Public Health in the Global Health Department. The combination of my course of study, experience, and passion for this realm are an ideal match with your objective to provide access to healthy water to low and middle income water-stressed populations. So this final statement, provide access to healthy water to low and middle income water-stressed populations, you got that directly from the website. And that's all I need as an interviewer to say, wow, no one else mentioned anything about what we do. And this student in the very opening mentioned that. So you can see it doesn't take that much to show me as an interviewer that you have more motivation and that you at least took an interest in learning more about what we do. So that's a great example of an opening paragraph. Section 2 is the body of your letter, and this is where you're going to be relaying more of your qualifications and continued motivation. So you're going to highlight the key experiences, again, relevant to the position. It's a key point. Probably a big mistake that I see sometimes is students will just simply kind of regurgitate their resume bullet points, and by that I mean they'll write the exact same line or two line that is in the bullet point. But you don't want to do that. I just read that, scanned it. I don't want to read that exact same thing. So don't just regurgitate the bullet point. Again, as in the resume, avoid generic and unsupported statements such as excellent communication skills. If you write excellent communication skills, give me the context of where you developed that. And you said, Roger, yes, I can talk more about how I developed that as a team lead at Habitat for Humanity. That's excellent. Use the relevant terms and phrases from the description in order to respond to the position. Interviewers love to see that you're using their language both in the resume and the cover letter. So if they say fast-paced environment, it's great to utilize that exact language in both the resume and the cover letter. And again, don't discount your academic and volunteer experiences. Those are just as relevant. And that's the number one thing I probably tell students. I don't think you're utilizing those volunteer and maybe some of your academic projects and work enough on the transferable skills. Those can be utilized as much as any formal experience. What that's going to look like, the main body of the cover letter. So for example, you say here you're currently enrolled in water sanitation hygiene course at Rollins for fall 2018, and that's going to give you additional training. My undergraduate role serving on the Stanford Student Orientation Committee developed my teamwork and program skills, including creating marketing communication materials as requested in your job description. So you took the creating marketing and communication materials directly from that description and stated it to the interviewer here. In the next paragraph, my undergraduate volunteer service with the American Red Cross provided me with experience in assisting with program development, include a high level of teamwork and communication. So again, you're emphasizing that you've had exposure to the teamwork, the communication aspect. It was through this experience I developed a passion for serving others by providing critical support to vulnerable populations. I believe my understanding of programs and working in teams towards common goals will be very beneficial in this role to support your safe water and sanitation program objectives at a community level. So here, you're really expressing that passion. I developed a passion for serving others by providing critical support to vulnerable populations. That's excellent. And especially this is really, again, more the point of the cover letter, because you can't state that in a bullet point on the resume. And so you can express that passion in the cover letter. And I'd say a lot of students don't give me enough motivation and passion in the cover letter. So you want to do both. You want to talk about the more core transferable skills like teamwork and communications, but then the motivation and the passion that you have. And the third section is the closing paragraph. So you're going to continue to express motivation and interest in the position. You're going to provide your contact information at the bottom. I know it's at the top, but a lot of interviewers are used to seeing it at the bottom, and they'll go right to the bottom as well. Thank them for their time and consideration. And what that's going to look like is something like this. I'm excited to assist the Global Safe Water team in reaching its goals by contributing my program and communication skills along with my passion for safe water. And then please don't hesitate to reach out to me if there's any additional information I can provide. And I look forward to meeting you in the near future to further discuss my experiences and qualifications. You left your email and phone number here. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. I like to end it with this, and then sincerely and your name. So a summary, key aspects to remember. Your cover letter should be something you customize for each position to highlight your abilities and express your unique motivation for the opportunity. Definitely as you write cover letters, 5 to 10, there will be some things that you don't have to change. Some of the experiences that express teamwork, you won't have to change as much. But when we get back to the motivation and giving me something about the organization, that's what I'm talking about. Customize that aspect of it. Again, don't just restate the 1 or 2 sentences from the bullet points. I see students that sometimes you can tell they just put those 2 bullet points and they'll make a sentence out of it. I don't want to read that exact. Yes, you will be repeating some of it, but make it more readable into the paragraph and provide more insights. And then your cover letter, it's very often the first and only impression you're going to get to make with an employer. So I like to express this to students that I think of the resume as the checklist of skill sets or data. When I'm scanning a resume, I'm just doing it 15 to 30 seconds and scanning it quickly. So it's kind of like data to me. Like, do I see a checklist for communication? Have they done any data work? But the cover letter, when I read that, I think of that as your voice. Think of it as, I like to tell students, if you only had 1 minute to speak with me as an interviewer, why should I hire you or interview you even for the Carter Center? And so think of it as your voice. You've got 1 minute to tell me this is the reason you should select me over other candidates. So I think framing it that way, that the cover letter is my voice and the resume are more of my qualifications on the checklist, that can help separate it out and really give you more motivation to write that cover letter. So next steps, again, on our site, we have a great cover letter guide. You can see several examples. So utilize that. And now we will open it up for questions on the cover letter as well.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Let's go ahead with the question. If we're sending an email to a potential employer, should we write the cover letter as part of the email body, or should we attach it as a document?
I like both. So if you have spent the time to write that cover letter, I like to paste that as the body of the email, because sometimes students will just write 2 or 3 sentences. I'm submitting my application for the program coordinator position. And they've written this great cover letter, but there's no guarantee that the interviewer is going to open up that attachment. So include that cover letter as a body of the email and attach it as well, because that interviewer may need to forward it, or it could be a recruiter and they need to forward it and they want the documents attached, the cover letter and the resume. But I love to have it as the body, because if they open it up and you've written it where you've expressed that passion and motivation, that might be enough for me to say, wow, this is someone that actually wrote a great cover letter body of this email, and I'm going to go ahead and just put her on the interview list.
Thank you, Roger. So the next question would be, if we have any time gaps in our resume, should we use our cover letter to explain those?
I would say at this point, it would have to be a pretty large time gap. So maybe a 6 to 12-month time gap you might want to explain, maybe if you did some traveling. But 1 to 3 month time gaps are very common at this point in your career. So only if it's a larger time gap between opportunities or school.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and proceed to the next question. What is your opinion about adding personal information? For instance, loss of my father or my brother's PTSD, any information related to mental health. Should I include any of this information in my cover letter?
That's a really great question, because, and if it, for something like mental health, I think that is applicable, because you can say, I understand firsthand the impact of mental health issues, and it has really raised my awareness and my passion for this area. Yes, I think that, if I'm reading this in a cover letter, I know that you're going to come in and you're passionate about it. So yes, because you have core relation to that opportunity, I would include that.
Okay, thank you so much, Roger. Is there a place for a summary of qualifications and or objectives at the top of a resume?
It's a summary of a qualification. Sometimes is a paragraph. Sometimes people put bullet points. At this point, I would just recommend the format of starting with education, especially now that you're coming into Rollins. So I would keep anything, qualifications, objectives, under the skills section. I would not write a paragraph on the resume at this point. It's not wrong, but I just don't think that a summary of qualifications or objectives, especially when it's written in a paragraph at the top, is read, because I'm looking at the resume to scan. If I'm going to read a paragraph, it's going to be the cover letter.
And I think we have just one more question. Can I write a good cover letter if I don't have any work or volunteer experience?
Yes, because you're still going to draw upon what you have learned in your undergraduate coursework. Yeah, I understand it may not be related to public health. There's still transferable skills and knowledge, and then that passion and motivation. Again, I think candidates overlook how much I really pay attention to that passion and motivation, especially in public health, because these can be challenging roles, and I need someone that's going to come in and really have a core motivation, and they're going to ask you, so why are you interested in this position? So that is what the cover letter is for. So yes, you can still write a good cover letter even though you may not have a lot of work or volunteer experience.
Okay, thank you so much, Roger. I think that concludes our Q&A session. Thank you so much for participation, and thank you for your questions.
Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited. You'll be coming in just a couple more weeks. So we look forward to seeing you here at Rollins. And again, this will be posted. So thank you for attending, and have a great day.